Oh. Wait. Okay. Hello? Okay. Okay. Good. Okay.
Hello.
Check. Okay.
Oh, I think. Oh, it works now.
Good.
Oh, you should.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay.
Hello. Okay, so we are happy to introduce the next two speakers. It's Liang Chen and Qidan He, who will be doing a talk shooting OS XL Capitan Kernel like a sniper.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, and good afternoon. And I'm happy to be presenting recon 2016, which is 10th anniversary. And my talk today is shooting the OS X EL Capitan kernel like a sniper. So why we use the term sniper is because of three reasons. The first, our team founded a team called Tencent Security Team Sniper, and with Tencent PC Manager team. And this team actually won the Master of Pong in Pongtong 2016. And the second reason is that we actually doing the Pongtong event, we do Safari remote exploit, and finally we got root privilege. And the third reason is that we from one of our exploits, the kernel bug we used is very likely to be a sniper because the vulnerable buffer is very far away from the buffer that we are targeting. So it needs very precise memory layouting. And in this talk, we will talk about something about exploited technologies in EL Capitan. So first, we will introduce ourselves. So my name is Liang Chen, and I'm a senior security engineer in Kernel. And my main focus is browser vulnerability research, including iOS kernel and sandbox escape. And also I did something about Android root. So Flanker will introduce himself.
My name is Qidan He, and I'm also a senior security researcher at Kernel. And my main focus are sandbox escape and mobile security, including Android and iOS, both at userland and the kernel.
Okay.
Thank you.
So our agenda today includes something we will talk about OS X kernel exploitation mitigation, introduced before EL Capitan and after EL Capitan. And also Qidan He will talk about the new approach that we found to exploit some not perfect bug after EL Capitan. And finally, we will do a demo to wrap up our talk. So to quickly go through the mitigation, the first, KASLR. This is very common in the modern OS. I think both Windows, Linux, and OS X has the KASLR in the kernel to randomize the kernel load address. And also there is DEP, which is data execution prevention to disallow the kernel RWX page. And also SMEP, SMAP. SMAP is a mitigation method to disallow kernel code execution directly from the user land, so that after that you will need to leak some pointers in the kernel instead of executing shellcode in the user's land directly. Okay, so after EL Capitan, actually, SMAP is also introduced. And the SMAP actually is more advanced than the current Windows mitigation because as far as we know that Windows doesn't have SMAP implemented at this moment. But on EL Capitan, it is implemented. But before that, we also need some support on the CPU architecture. So we can use command syscontrol to check whether our CPU supports SMAP or not. So we can find it is in leaf 7 feature. So from a non-supported scenario, only SMAP is listed. And from the new MacBook, we can find that the SMAP is also listed. This kind of CPU architecture includes the latest model of MacBook and the new MacBook, MacBook Pro and the new MacBook. Yeah, so we have some mitigations introduced by Capitan as also. This includes mainly for info leak technologies. So before Capitan, we actually have the VM map copy approach to leak some kernel addresses. So before Capitan, we can find that if we use OOL to send the message to the kernel, actually we will have this VM map copy structures, which includes two key fields. One field is kdata, which you can modify it using overflow vulnerability to modify kdata to something else, so that when you receive that OOL message, you can read whatever you want. This is one, and another is the size field. You can modify the size so that you can read out of bound. So this is before Capitan, and introduced by Capitan 10.11. Actually, you can find that the kdata pointer actually is moved, and instead it uses inline the structure, which the data will directly appended after VM map copy metadata struct. So after that, there is no such pointer, so you cannot modify that pointer. But still, there is some ways to bypass this. So first, even if we cannot do arbitrary memory read, we can still try to use overflow vulnerability to increase the size field, so that we can put another important object after that struct, and then try to read the vtable out, so that we can bypass the kslide. We can leak the kslide to bypass KSLR. Another approach is funded by Luca, which he suggests that we can increase the size field and try to read it out, so that VM map copy T struct will be freed to another zone, so that you can play with zone alloc and dealloc again and again in later on. But after Capitan 10.11.1, actually another mitigation is introduced. You can find that if you use any vulnerability to modify the size field of OOL, the VM map struct, then you try to receive the data, and then you will find that the kernel will panic immediately. So let's see what happened. So here you can see that there are two struct. One is the mark message OOL descriptor, which describe OOL message in the kernel before you receive it. And in this struct, there is a field called address, which points to a VM map copy struct. And you can find that both struct has a field named size, so that when you try to receive the OOL message, it will do a check to see if these two size field matches. If it mismatch, or the size, the OL descriptor message size does not equal to the VM map copy size, then it will do a panic immediately. But if it finds it is equal, which passed the check, then it will call the next function to copy out the memory to the user mode. So here it introduced a new problem, which is total to time of check to time of use. So you can assume that the first check is passed, and in between two sentences, you can try to use another thread to try to do an overflow to that size. So if that succeeds, the race succeeds, then you can bypass this mitigation. So, overall, the mitigation introduced by Apple in Capitan is very effective. Although we have the total issue still exists, it is not very reliable because the time window in between two sentences is very short. If you fail to raise to get some instructions to execute in between two sentences in another thread, then you will receive a panic, which is not very reliable. So such mitigation will require us harder to exploit the kernel, especially you don't have a separate info leak vulnerability. And also, if you want to exploit the Capitan, I think before our bugs in the public, we can find all of them are kind of perfect overflow vulnerability, which means you need to you need an overflow vulnerability, and its length and its written content are both controllable. So in many cases, such vulnerability, we will have some non-perfect ones, which we have to give up before that. So let's look at the kernel exploitation requirement in OS X. First, of course, you need to leak the K-slide so that you can bypass the KASLR. And currently, Apple did a lot of mitigation on it. And also, you need to leak some address pointers of controllable data. This is previously done by markport k-object, but this is also mitigated actually before the Capitan. And even worse thing is that we actually need a very perfect bug to achieve those. And also, because we you know, in recon2016, we actually targeting the browser. So not only your bug need to be triggered by the browser, because the browser has a very strict sandbox context, and also your exploitation method also needs to be reachable from a remote attack surface. So this requires higher exploitation technologies. So even sometimes we may have some non-perfect bug, like you can write or you can overflow, but the value you overflow or the value you do OOB write is not arbitrary value. Actually, it has some limitation. So if that is the case, you will get even more trouble. So it reminded me actually the hard time of the internet exploitation in the year 2012, where I think it is very unlikely for you to exploit UAF or something similar, which is not very perfect. So another thing that I need to think about is memory spraying. So for memory spraying, what reminds me is the heap spray on the browser side, which is very reliable, extremely, and especially in 32-bit systems, because the reason is that the memory at that time is much larger than the address space, because on a 32-bit system, the address space is 4 GB, but your memory is larger than that. So you can do some tests. But you can do a lot of allocation on duplicate values, so that on a specific and fixed value, you can get your reliable controlled data. And on 64-bit system, it will be less effective. This is because that if you try to malloc some memory a lot of times, you can see that on Mac OS system, the 5th byte is always different and relatively random, so that you need 256 multiple by 4 gigabyte to have a reliable heap spraying, which is not likely at the current situation. So let's think about the memory spraying also in kernel, because although the VM map copy structure is mitigated a lot, its feature, it has still some good features for the memory spraying, because before you receive the data, actually the OOL data will keep in kernel before you receive it. And also, you can consider that although the OS X kernel is 64-bit, and actually the address space is much larger than the physical memory, so it looks like unachievable. But if you research into it more detailedly, you will find it is still possible, because it depends on two questions. First is the OS X kernel address space really large. Although the space is large, but how about what address it actually choose, or it is really random or not? So after we research the address, we can find that first, the kernel and the KEXT test base is very dependent on the K-slide. So its load address is actually a very fixed base plus the K-slide, which is less than 512 MB, the megabyte. So this range is much smaller than current physical memory size. And another is also the kernel database, which is very likely very similar as the test base. So, and also we found that when you do the calloc allocation of memory, actually we can find the start of that address can be found at zonemap.hdr.links.start. And we try to unslide that memory address upon each boot. And based on our statistics, we can find that the unslide value of that address is very close. Which means that and also the allocation starts from the lower side to the higher side, so which is very good, and we can try to do the spraying with OOL with more than 512 megabyte multiple by 2, which is 1 gigabyte. So if we do 1 gigabyte of OOL spraying, we can do a very reliable memory spraying, which means you can have the controllable data at a very fixed address. So this graph actually shows that with more than 1 gigabyte of spraying, you can find that at a very fixed address, you can have controllable data. So after we found that we should ask ourselves why we need spraying. So spray, if you have a very good approach of memory spraying, actually you have you got a workaround to leak some calloc address, because to bypass the SMAP and the SMAP, you have to use to leak some kernel address, and on those address you need some controllable data to prepare the ROP chain or something like that. And another reason, besides those reasons, there are also some very good features which Flanker will introduce later to help our sniper to realize the final pawn. So we will introduce a case study.
Okay, hello everyone, and I will start introducing the detailed case study, the CVE 2016-18-15, and we named it as the Blizzard. And this is the kernel bug we used in this year's Ponton competition. And this bug lies in the IO accelerator family, and we believe that it exists in all MacBook models, and even since the birth of MacBooks, and also iMacs or Mac Pros, and also other models. I will not elaborate about the detail of this bug here because the time is not enough, but I will do a brief introduction on the impact of this bug. The final impact of this bug is a vector write that will go auto-bound after certain carefully prepared situations in the carefully prepared memory, and we need 8 IO kit calls to trigger this bug. And the vulnerable memory allocation lies in the kalloc 48 block. And the image in the bottom of this presentation shows the memory layout when the bug is triggered. We can see that the first six blocks zone lies in the 48 zone, and its allocation contains the originally IG vector, and which has the size, capacity, and the storage field. And we can prepare a carefully controlled 48 block after this benign 48 block and place some fake IG vector there. And the vulnerable function will finally goes into the IG vector add, and it will lead to an OOB write. And in this function, we can see that some values, some actually float values, are retrieved from a structure named rectangle pair T. The rectangle pair T actually consists of 2 rectangles, and it's 8 floats. And each float, due to the limitation of this bug's nature, each float must be in range negative FFFF to positive FFFF in hex format. And the overwrite will start at a storage pointer plus 24 plus the size offset at the ends at a storage. We can see that this write is a descending fashion. And another thing we need to know that in IEEE 753 format, that the floats in range FFFF is actually represented in 3F8000 starts from this value and ends at 477FF00. And the negative part of this flows is represented in BF800 and C77FFF00. And this is an in-memory repetition of these 2 floats. And with this knowledge in mind, we will now introduce the generic exploitation approach for this non-perfect OOB write. So, as Liang has introduced before, that if you get a perfect write anything anywhere vulnerabilities, it's somehow it's harder to exploit it in modern exploitation, but it's not a very big problem. But if you get a write restricted something anywhere vulnerability, just like the Blizzard vulnerability, and you can only write 8 floats continuously in this range, and like the value, the keyword you can write only begins in 3F and in 47, or it begins at BF and in C7. And with this vulnerability, how can you achieve a reliable exploitation? So how to turn it into an RP control? And we have to ask ourselves, where do we write, and what do we write? And how can we ensure stability, especially for competitions like Ponton? And we must make the exploitation technique reachable in sandbox. And how can we defeat the modern mitigations like KSLR and SMAP and SMEP? And can we pawn the kernel just to use this single non-perfect OOB bug? The answer is yes. It's hard, but it's not impossible. So we have several challenges that the first thing comes in mind for an skilled OSX kernel exploitation researcher. He may think of overwriting a VM map copy length. But as Liang said in the previous slides, Apple has fixed it in introduced some mitigations in the 10.11.1. Although we still have ways to bypass it, but it's not applicable to our vulnerability because the Blizzard vulnerability requires continuously. We can see that it is a continuously write descending from high address to low address, and it will overwrite. If we choose to overwrite the length in the VM map copy, we will definitely overwrite the header, also overwrite the header of VM map copy, and it will lead to a kernel panic. Also, we can see that the value, the keyword we write is not very perfect because the two address, 3F and BF, in kernel, it's not a valid address, or you can see it's not a reachable address in the kernel. So we cannot overwrite the VM map copy length to do some exploitation, and we can think of we can overwrite some like a heap location or some other addresses. And first, we may think of overwriting some like a heap location or vtable pointer location. If we do aligned 8 bytes aligned right, for example, we overwrite a heap location, we can see that we overwrite the heap location with some BF 8000, and of course it will not work because the BF 80 address does not exist, is not a valid address in the kernel address space. But if we do a 4 byte aligned right, that overwriting the low 4 bytes of this heap address or vtable pointer address, then we can turn it into a valid overwrite. And thanks to the x64 architecture that allows us to do a 4 byte or even 1 byte element write in a move instruction. So we can see that in this instruction, like move Rx plus RSI plus 18, and we write RCX to this location, and the REX and the RSI are both controllable by us. But the RCX is limited to the range we have discussed before. So another problem is why not we overwrite some vtable pointer at the head of some user clients? We do not choose this approach because in most user clients, the high bytes starting at FF7F, and this is not the high bytes of heap addresses. Because in kernel, in the OSX kernel, the heap address usually have a high bytes of FF80. So if we overwrite the vtable pointer, we cannot get it to redirect some address we can control. So we cannot overwrite some vtable pointer to get RP control. But there is an exception. The root domain user client, it has a vtable pointer starting whose force bytes is 80, but its size is too small. If its size is too small, there may be some. It will introduce new obstacles for our exploitation. The first is we prefer to spray or allocate some big user clients whose size is n multiply page size to ensure that its vtable pointer will be located at the starting of a page, and which makes this address more predictable. And also, small user clients will introduce spray speed issues. And we observed that the spray speed of user clients decreases as the user client count increases. And people may ask why. And in this kernel stack trace of opening new user clients, we can see that in the I/O service, new user client, it will finally cause into some I/O registry attached to parent and attached to child, and finally into the array member. And this is a feature of the I/O registry plane that each I/O user client needs to link to their parent I/O service, and their parents maintains a collection of all its children. And we can see that in this function named attached to parent, it will finally the need parent flag will be finally need to set to true, and if it's set to true, it will cause to parent attached child in which the parent IO service adds the new user client to its collection. And we can see that the collection is maintained in a format of OS array, and the array member performs a linear search in this OS array. So anyone with some fundamental data structure or algorithm technology will realize that the total time complexity here is the O(n) square complexity. And what makes things worse is that we see the stacked object function in the make links that the new OS object, thus the user client is inserted into the OS array, and its capacity need to be ensured, which means that OS array need to be expanded if its capacity is not enough. But if it's expanded, we can see that there are some allocating, freeing, copying, and freeing occur here. And this will make the total new user client the total time cost by a single new user client function. It will make the time much longer. And we do a statics analysis here. We can see that the total spree time is increasing in O(n) square time complexity. It is very obvious that the time increases very much as the user client count your spree increases. So it's a pity that it's in 2016 now, and we still have an O(n) square time complexity function in the core of a modern operating system, and we hope the Apple engineers will fix that to make our spree faster. And so now let's go back to our exploitation. And we know that we cannot overwrite the waitable pointers, and but hey man, I'm your accelerator, and we have a pointer field in the user clients that we can overwrite, because we can see that in nearly all our accelerator family 2 user clients, they have a service pointer associated, and it's a point to Intel accelerator. And the Intel accelerator is actually the representative of the graphics driver itself, and it's located also in the KLOC 8192 zone, and it's also a heap location that is whose fourth byte is 80, and it is perfect for to overwrite, and it also contains a virtual function calls for us to obtain RP control. And we can overwrite it and point it to a controllable memory. We use OR message to spray. We can see that in this screenshot, it is a memory layout of IG Excel video contest, and we can see that as an offset of 528, there is a heap address, and this is actually the heap address of the Intel accelerator, and we can overwrite it. But another problem arises that we cannot directly call the fake service, the fake Intel accelerator's virtual function, because we know that the head of VM map copy is something we cannot control. It is determined by the VM map copy type itself, and we cannot use the head of it as a waitable address to locate some virtual function calls. So we need an indirect virtual function call, and the selector 0, the context finish function, is our superstar because it contains the indirect virtual function call in the service, point to M event machine, and it will cause context finish. So now it seems that we have ways of RP control, and we need some ways to prepare memory. And the steps of the memory preparing is listed as follows. First, we will spray some 50,000 OR messages, and all of them size are double page size. And the pushing heap, we will push up the heap covering two key address. One of them is BF80, and we can see this is the float representation of -1. And why we choose this address? Why we don't choose the address starting with CF, with C, or like starting with 3 or starting with 4? Because KSR will push heap location up or push heap location down at each boot, and it's determined by a key slide. And but in our observation that this address BF is 0, it is a stable fixed point address, reachable in spring, and some higher address like address started with C is not applicable because it's too high. And we will free middle pass of the OOL message and fill it with the IGXL video context, whose size is also double page size. And we will cover another key address, that is address, we name it as address A, that is 623.88000. And we will perform a write using the Blizzard vulnerability at the service pointer descending, and we will point it to OOL message whose content we can control. And we will call all the, we will do in a for loop, we will call each IGXL video context external method. And if one of them is corrupted, and when we call this one's external method, like a context finish, the RP will be redirected, and we will get control of the control flow. And this is some snippet code for the spray. And in 10.11.3, the offset was 2030, so we are using 2030 at this moment. So the same that we now have a perfect approach for RP control, and by spraying we know that at address A, which is BF FF80 BF 80000, and it is covered. Oh, I'm sorry. This is address B. Address B is covered by the VM map copy content, and the content we can control it when we do spraying. And the address A, starting with FF623 or whatever, it is covered with IGXL video context. And with this in mind, with these two address in mind, we can move further to info leak. And there is an interesting function in the IGXL video context whose name is get hardware steppings. And the function is actually very simple, and we can see that in line 6 to line 9, it returns some particular offset content in the service, in the Intel accelerator itself. But the line 10 is very interesting because it retrieved some address at the offset 1288 in the Intel accelerator, and it will return the value at this address to you. We know that we have pointed the corrupted IG vector, IG video context service pointer to control the VM map copy content. So the line 9 and the line starting from line 6 to line 9 will only return the content in the VM map copy. And the content is known by us because we prepare the content. But line 10, if we prepare some address at the offset 1288, it means that we can get arbitrary address read from this particular statement. And this is it is a very useful statement. So now we come up with initial leaking strategy. That we know that by spraying we have ensured that A lies in address A, it lies on IGXL video context, and at B it lies on VM map copy, whose content we have already known because we sprayed it. And we overwrite a service pointer to B, and the service will point to the VM map copy. And when we will do spraying, we fill the VM map copy with 414141, and we know that the code here from 6 to 9, it will return us with 414141, and we can use it as a needle to detect. And the 10th statement will return us a byte at an address we specified at the offset 1288. So here's the figure, and we believe the figure will help us to understand it more clearly. And this is the initial layout before the vulnerability has been triggered, but after the memory layout has been prepared. We can see that in normal situations, by spraying that we can ensure that an IGXL video context, it begins at address A And we can see that as offset 528, it has a pointer to Intel accelerator, who is also on the heap, and in some higher address, for example, at address B, there lies some VMAP copy, and they are all at KLOC 8192, which is double page size zone. And we trigger the blizzard vulnerability, and we overwrite the service field, and we make it pointed to this spread controlled content. And how do we fill this content? And this can be explained in this figure that the blue zone, the blue rectangle is something we cannot control. It is the header of VMAP copy. But in other address, for example, in this white rectangles, we fill it with 414141, and the needle address, who are illustrated by some like brown rectangles. It is a needle, and it corresponds to the line 9 to line 6 and to line 9 of the get hardware steppings. It will return the content, or it will return 4141, and we will use it as a needle. And the gray zone, the gray rectangle, is an address that we actually want to read. We can specify some address here, and we use it to do an arbitrary read, and we make it point back to the IGXL video context, which means that we can read the head of the IGXL video context and get a waitable pointer address. So it looks somehow perfect, but I think some of you may have questions now. That how can you ensure that the IGXL video context, whose size is double page, how can you ensure that it will begin at address A? Why cannot it begins at address A plus page size? So it is an object whose size is double page, and you cannot you cannot say that it will must falls at address A or falls at address A plus page size. There is a 50 to 50 chance for both of them. So also for the VMAP copy, you also cannot ensure that the VMAP copy whose size is double page, it will fall at the address B or address B plus page size. You cannot be sure that. So we need to if you only use one address, and you can only get a 50 success rate. So we need to write twice to ensure a 100% success rate. So we do an OB write both at A and A plus page size, and when we are preparing the content of VMAP copy, we write the address both at 1288 and 1288 minus page size, that is 288. And I think this can also be explained in a figure more clearly. This is the ideal content. This is the ideal situation that in address A, IGXL video context start here, and in address B, VMAP copy start here. And what if the address A falls right in the middle of an IGXL video context? And in other words, the IGXL video context begins at address A minus page size. And so by writing twice, we can ensure that at least one of these two IGXL video contexts will have their service pointer corrupted. For this situation, we do a double write. We will corrupt the IGXL video context starting at address A. And in this situation, we can see that the IGXL video context starting at address A minus page size, it is not corrupted because we have already written some meaningless field starting at 1528. But the IGXL video context starting at address A plus page size, it is corrupted, and we can use it to continue our exploitation. And also, for this VMAP copy, and what if the VMAP copy, the address B falls in the middle of the VMAP copy? It does not begin at address B. And we can also do a double prepare and in the content of VMAP copy. And for example, in this situation, if address B is right in the middle of the VMAP copy, and as we prepare the two locations, both at 1140 and 1288, and also at the to address minus its page size. And we can see that the IGXL video context will happily use the memory content starting at BF80, which is address B, and starting B plus 2 page size. You use this content as a fake Intel accelerator, and it will retrieve the content here, and as an arbitrary address read. And as we have already prepared some address here, and we can still do our info leak technique. We can still point it back to the address A. Oh, we can see here the problem. If we point it back to address A, we are not reading the vtable content. We are reading in the middle of the IGXL video context, which means actually it's 0. It's not a useful content. So how can we solve this problem? Actually, thanks to the feature of VMAP copy that we can do a refill, free and refill of this VMAP copy, which means that if we do a read at address A and we found it's 0, it means that we need to read address A plus page size. And we can just free these VMAP copies, and we refill it with the gray rectangle modified, and modified with address A plus page size, so that we can still read out the vtable pointer address and continue our exploitation. So now we have expanded our strategy of the InfoLeak solution, and the overall steps can be seen in this figure. That first we prepare the heap layouts and fill the OR messages, and also fill OR messages, free some of them, and fill in the IGXL video context. And we triggered the IO connect call. If the leaked byte is 0, it means that we need to adjust the read address by a page size, and we will replace the OR messages with the address plus a page size. And as we can recall that in the function get hardware steppings, at each time only 1 byte is leaked out here. So we need to do like 8 info leaks, and we repeat the steps, and let n equals n plus 1 byte, and we do a free and refill the OR messages until we leaked all the 8 bytes of the virtual pointer of this KST. And with this KST's virtual table pointer in hand, and we refill the OR message with this address, and we use it to leak a kernel offset. It is because that if we leak out the virtual table pointer of the KST, it is actually in the data. The address is actually in the data section of the our accelerator family, and to do RP and to execute some root commands, we need the address of the kernel itself. So we choose to leak the address of the OS object release function, which is the first function of all OS objects virtual tables. And this function is actually in the text section of the kernel, so that we can use it to get the kernel offset text section offset leak. So actually, there is some better way exist, and we will leave it as access for readers. Actually, it didn't need to be so complex. So to recap it with both the InfoLeak technology and both the RP control, that we get a whole look of this our exploitation. And first we spray like some 2 gigabytes OR messages and tint it with 4141 and prepare some address we want to read at the 2 offsets. And also we free some middle pass of OERs and fill it with actual video context and trigger OB write. And we iterate all the open user clients and call the get hardware steppings and to look for 4141. If we get a 4141, this IGXL video context is definitely the one that is corrupted. And we can use it to, the one corrupted means that it is located at address A, or it's located at address A plus one page size. So we can use it to do further exploitation. And we will advance the relocation 1 byte by 1 and to get a variable address of the KST and also the kernel's text section address offset. And we will refill the OR messages with RP chain, and we will call contest finish to do the RP control. And finally, we do a PON here. So actually, we can see that the info leak steps are much more complicated than the RP control, and this thanks to the mitigation introduced by the OSX kernel that makes our work much more harder. So in a conclusion, we have discussed previous exploitation techniques and their exploitation mitigations by Apple, and we have presented a new generalized exploitation technique working that even you have not so good restricted OB right, you can still use it to get like 100% stable kernel root exploit. And we can see that we can see that the get hardware steppings function and like the contest finish function and also the sprays, these are all legitimate features in the OSX kernel, and it is not related to any vulnerability, and which means that we can adopt it to other OB right vulnerabilities or even heap overflow vulnerabilities, and so we call it a generalized exploitation approaches. So here, and we want to credit to those people from some in our teams like Marco, QB, Wushi, and some from Pangu like we know, and also Luca, and also one of my classmates who works in Google to provide some insights on the exploitation. So we will do a demo. We do demo here to save some time because we know that the spraying takes some time, especially on this low end. Not low end, the memory is restricted and the CPU is very slow in this MacBook. So the live demo is too time consuming. We will do a video demo here, and I will release the full exploit code in a few weeks in the GitHub. And the Blizzard vulnerability itself will be discussed in Las Vegas Black Hat this summer, and we hope to see you there. And so we can see that if you want to know the details of the vulnerability itself, not the exploitation methods. And of course, the exploit of the, we can recall that to achieve a stable memory layout, let me wait. To achieve a stable memory layout here, actually it takes some work because the KLOC 48 zone is frequently used in kernel. And it's somehow hard to achieve a stable kernel layout. And we will introduce our other techniques used in this vulnerability in the Blizzard talk. And so let's do a demo here. And the credits goes to Hans Zimmer for the background music. And I assume he's not here. So the computer is popped out already. And an interesting observation is that you cannot pop up a root calculator in user mode. It's very interesting, and you can try it if you do not believe it.